Well, let's just deal with it. You've looked at the bulletin and you stayed. So you know today we're still talking about margin, but we're talking about the church's least favorite. Let me just let you peek behind the curtain from a preacher's standpoint. This is our least favorite topic to preach, just as much as it's your least favorite topic to hear. Can we just accept it? All right. There's the elephant. It's in the room. All right, deal with it. Now, as we talk about financial margin today, I want you to kind of let me help you kind of understand why I feel like we need to kind of address it, because we are constantly, just as we kind of talked about last week a little bit, we're out of alignment in so many ways. And just like that scheduling margin where we're constantly tugged and pulled to say yes to the good things that keeps us from saying yes to the best things. And you know, and so it's healthy for us to have a little bit of tension, and therefore I have my buddy here because we're going to do a little bit of work today. It's going to feel like a workshop slash sermon, but I hope, just to let you know where we're going today, I hope and I pray that we're going to give you a template, a kind of a tool, because it's one thing for you to leave here wondering, am I out of alignment with this? Am I out of alignment with that? And what does it look like? How can I tell? And so before you leave here today, we're going to give you some stuff to kind of work through. Hopefully you're going to go home, you're going to have something to get around your kitchen table, to get on at the couch in your living room and just pull out everything and say, okay, God, are we aligned with you? Just like with our scheduling. And next week with our morals, are we aligned with how you're wanting us to live our life? I found a statistic. It's probably changed over the last couple of years, but the average American family living paycheck to paycheck. So the family, the average family that's going at the end of the month going, I can't get that check quick enough. That's what we're talking about. It's 55%. So what that looks like, we understand the church represents, what's happening out there. So who I'm talking to today, and my family has been there, where you're when you talk about finances, you're just talking about, hey, I'm just trying to get. I'm looking at the end of the month and I'm going, okay, how much is in there? How much can we spend? And I probably should have planned this a little differently, to be kind of real with you. With Fair Week, how many went to the fair this week? Let's deal with that elephant, okay? There's nothing wrong with that fair, okay? So I didn't plan this after you went to the fair and you paid $10 for that funnel cake, okay? It's no judgment, because I had a caramel apple with nuts on it myself, okay? So we're defining margin again, okay? So in case you haven't been here or you're like me, you forget from week to week, here it is. Andy Stanley, we're using his definition. He says, the amount available beyond what is necessary. So again, from finances, having financial margin, having amount available, having something available beyond what is necessarily means is if my budget is $3,000 a month, then my bills and all of my responsibilities, what's necessary, as we're going to kind of get to in just a minute, what's necessary hopefully is less than $3,000. And whatever is less, and whatever that difference is, if it's $2,800, then you have how much margin? Some of you math majors, you have $200 margin, and so that's what we're kind of dealing with. 1 Timothy 6 through 10, we're going to get into the word a lot today because we want to hear what God has to say. Yet true godliness with contentment is itself great wealth. After all, we brought nothing with us when we came into the world, and we can't take anything with us when we leave it. So if we have enough food and clothing, so he's talking about the basics, right? Let us be content. But people who long to be rich fall into temptation and are trapped by many foolish and harmful desires that plunge them into ruin and destruction. And I want you to pay attention, because we skew this verse here. For the love of money, not money, but for the love of money is the root of all kinds of evil. And some people, craving money, have wandered from the true faith and pierced themselves with many sorrows. So it goes back to our alignment. If we are not managing and stewards of what God has entrusted us with in our time here, in regard to finance, what's going to happen is we get caught in all the bells and whistles and all the world has to offer. All of a sudden, it's not like we make a choice one morning and say, you know what? I'm going to forget God. I'm going to forget His will. I'm going to forget how to manage. I'm just going to go that way. It's a gradual drift. I'm going to go on this trip, and I can't afford it, so I'm going to get that card. And all of a sudden, it just kind of, you make the payments, and you can kind of stay ahead for a couple of months, and all of a sudden, something else comes up, and you have to push that back, and all of a sudden, you're just mounting up. And you've wondered. It doesn't mean you've left the church. It doesn't mean you left the faith. What it means is you've drifted off of alignment, and you're constantly having to pull back. And it wasn't a one decision. It wasn't a one compromise. It was a gradual, little by little. And all of a sudden, instead of managing what you have, all of a sudden you're overwhelmed. And now your trust isn't on God. You're not relying on Him. It's all about, how can I get through this? So our culture's definition of happiness, this may not apply to you, okay? It may not apply to you, but for the most part, what our culture defines as happiness is more than I currently have. More than I currently have. You realize this. You realize that all these major companies, they are spending millions and millions and millions of dollars to prove to you and to help you feel like, if I don't have that, then I have no value. If I don't have that, then I'm not going to fit in. And so they're brainwashing us, and this isn't me doing a conspiracy there. It's just real life. They're spending a lot of money to try to help you and convince you that if you don't have this, if you don't have the newest version of this, if you don't have that, then you're not valuable if you don't have this. So the question, for me at least, is, what's driving your desire for more? What is that? And you can do a whole nother weed adventure of, in the weeds and getting lost in it, of what more is for you. But what's driving your more? Is it, I want to retire and I'm getting close and I want to, pour into that. And what's driving you? You need to get something and you feel like, hey, this is where so you're going to save up and you're going to pour into that. What is driving your desire for more? Matthew 6:19 and 21 puts it in perspective. He says, don't store up treasures here on earth, where moth eat them and rust destroys them, where thieves break in and steal. Store your treasures in heaven, where moths and rust cannot destroy, and thieves do not break in and steal. Wherever your treasure is, so whatever's most important to you, wherever your treasure, there's the desires of your desires of your heart will be also. So, whatever we're consumed with, if it's not what's most important, and we'll deal with that in just a minute too. If we're consumed with something that's temporary, if we're consumed with something else besides pleasing Him and honoring Him, then our heart, right, it's consumed by that. And therefore, everything within us is at war. Because we're trying to honor God, and God is constantly saying, honor me, trust me, and which is what it all comes back to. Is giving back to Him, is showing trust to Him. And how we steward this shows we're trusting in Him and not of ourselves. So how do we create financial margin? Real quick, how do we do it? Now, the practical answer is this, and it's very simple, right? It's either you make more money or you spend less money. You okay with that? Have we gotten that simple? That's the practical answer to create more margin. But the spiritual answer, because we're at church and we need to do this, is we put God first with our finances. And this is where I want to kind of get into the board, because you've been waiting. When is this going to come into play? What is He going to write down that's going to make me uncomfortable? Here it is, okay? So we've dealt with this before. Okay, we're going to call this principle. If you've been around here long enough, you understand it. If you listen to Dave Ramsey or read any of his stuff, you know what I'm talking about, okay? Now, I'm not going to say everything Dave Ramsey is the gospel, because he's not Jesus, but he has some pretty good stuff out there, and we're going to pull this from him and some others. What this means is 10, 80. Anybody doing some math here? What does that equal? think. You guys are so sweet and nice on such a day. Okay, here, 10 is God's. Okay, that's how it works. Here's this fun, right? Me. You get to say, where's mine? There's yours. Okay, we're going to talk about what me looks like in just a second. Okay, and then you have that living looks better than I practiced, I promise you. But this is living. Now, what we're looking at as far as what at least the standard we get from Scripture here, and then this is just from practicality purposes, and here, so we're looking at 10 is what God says, hey, I want you to trust me with 10% of what you have. What I entrust with you, I want you to trust me back. Okay, we'll get into that, what the Word says. And then this 10, the me part is savings, because stuff happens in your life, okay? Over the past few months, you've had things happen to you financially that you didn't see coming. You know, that kid, they hit a growth spurt, and all those jeans and all those shirts and all those shoes you just purchased, they're meaningless now. And you're going to get 10% of what you paid if you sell it on Facebook or whatever the case may be. So you're in the hole, essentially, because you've got to buy that. You kids, you have toddlers and everything, those diapers, they're going to grow out of that size diaper. And at that baby shower, that's all the size they gave you, right? And so all this life is happening. Your car broke down, and you decided, you know what, I'm going to keep this car a little longer. Well, you can fix it. That water heater busted. Your kid needed braces, all right? And even though you can do the payment plan, the money's still due once a month. And so this right here is about not just having an emergency fund, as Ramsey would say, to have something that's not going to peel into this or this, but this 10% is not just for the now disasters and the stuff that you don't see coming. It's also about planning for later. It's about retirement. It's about looking ahead and saving up so that, you know what, I don't want to have to work until, you know, if you want to, that's fine, but I want to be able to retire, and I want to be able to enjoy, and if your kids live elsewhere, I want to be able to go see them and have that kind of freedom. So this is yours. And God says, if you'll trust me, if you'll give me some, and if you'll set some aside, look at what you get to live on. And what does this entail? This entails all your bills, all your stuff, all the things that you owe, all the things that you enjoy doing that are fun, that are enjoyable. Well, listen, we're going to get back to it. Okay? We're not done with this. We want to move on to your notes because some of you are going stir crazy because you're like, there's blanks. We've got to fill these things. So when we put God first, what happens? There's 3 things I believe that happen. Number 1, we experience His blessings. Malachi 3:10. This is our go-to. You knew it was coming, so we're going to go ahead and use it. Bring all the tithes into the storehouse so that there will be enough food in my temple. Now, why does he say storehouse? What does that mean? Let me just give you a quick little understanding of context. They were bringing food, and in that day, God's people and the Levites, they kind of stored and they took care of the church, but they also took care of food and stuff because they didn't have some of the stuff we have, okay, in provisions and be able to stockpile things. So they would bring 10% of their goods, and that was for everyone to kind of share and help each other out when things got bad or droughts came or whatever the case may be. So he's saying storehouses, where do you get your nourishment? And he's spiritualizing it here as well as making it practical. The Little C Church is where we get our nourishment. It's where we get our encouragement. It's where we hopefully align. It's where we get to be part of something bigger than ourselves. And so that's why we bring our tithes to the Little C Church. And we say, okay, this is where it's at. This is where I'm getting my food. This is where I'm getting my nourishment. This is where I'm getting my perspective. This is where I'm getting not just this, but this is why we have children's ministries and student ministries and missions things so that we're focused not just on everything temporary. Hopefully we're focusing on things that matter for all eternity. If you do, it's conditional. Says the Lord of heaven's armies, I will open up the windows of heaven for you. I will pour out a blessing so great you won't have enough room to take it in. And this is where he does something where he doesn't do this in any other thing, any other command, any other conditional challenge. He says, try it. Put me to the test. So what does tithing do? Tithing builds our trust in God. Once we let go of something, once we say, I know this was yours anyway, but here's 10% back, here's this. Once we say, God, this is yours, what have we done? We've said, you know what, God, I trust you with this. So it's not just God's, we're just saying, I trust you with this. This is how much faith I have because, man, I would really like to live on 90. I would really like to even live on 100. I would like to enjoy all of that. But by saying, I trust you, I'm not just, and this isn't me being a preacher and spinning things where you trust in me and I promise you're going to be blessed this week. There's a double portion for you this month. That's garbage. It's not in there. You donate to us, I'm not going to give you an anointed prayer cloth, right? You to take with you and lay over your bills and God's going to cancel them out. Those bills are yours. You did that. I did that. These are my bills. That's not God's problem. That's our problem. Are we clear? That blessing, it isn't, I'll give you if you give to me. And that's where you have this prosperity gospel garbage that says, if you give to the church, if you give to this preacher, if you give to this work, if you give to this ministry, then God's going to give to you. Here's what I want you to see. Jesus' goal in giving was this. Jesus' goal with money wasn't to get it. It was to keep it from getting us. Let that sink in for just a second. When we're trusting Him, okay, you're trusting us to do something that matters and that rings through all eternity. And let me just tell you, that's a weight that is very heavy on myself and on whoever you decide, board, leadership. It's a great burden. And we're going to have to answer for that. We're going to have to answer for what we did with what you've trusted us with. But by saying, God, this is yours, we say, I'm trusting you that all of this and all of my needs are going to be met. Number two. When we put God first, we become supernaturally content. I love this one. Proverbs 15:16, Solomon, the wisest man to ever live, he said this, better to have little. How many of you say that makes no sense? I mean, you're talking about better to have little, whatever, less food, less whatever. Better to have little with the fear of the Lord than to have great treasure and inner turmoil. Trusting Him to provide what's necessary for us. What happens? We gradually, here's what begins to happen. What gradually begins to happen is I began to see the stuff that I already have. And here's the beauty of it, because it worked for me. Instead of being lured over to get something new right now, what if I say, you know what? I like what I have. I like what I have. Now, I'm not against you. You have a new Apple Watch. I haven't got an Apple Watch here, right here, but it's a new one. And it's not one that I can go swimming in. Not that I'm swimming every day. It's not the weather to talk about swimming, but it'd be really cool. But there's been temptation. I say, man, that's a cool watch. You mean you can get in water with that thing? That is amazing. I'd like that. And then you go over and you see how much it is, right? You go, I would really like that if somebody gave it to me, right? And so I'm good with this, right? So when we begin to work through this, what we begin to say is, what if instead of getting that, and again, there's nothing wrong with you getting a new vehicle, whatever the case may be, and as far as that timing, what if God may say instead of getting that now, what if you say, I'm going to tune this thing up, and I'm going to keep it another year. I'm going to save up a little bit more, and I'm going to put a bigger down payment and have less payments and all that kind of stuff on that. What's next? What if? It's me being a golfer. I look at my golf clubs and I go, yeah, I like these golf clubs, but you go into Dick's Sporting Goods or Academy and you go down that aisle. Now, you can fill in the blank wherever. Golfing may not be your temptation, so stick your toes out there real quick. And it could be fishing gear, right? It could be something else. I'm trying not to get elbows action here, okay? Whatever that it is. But I look, and I'm not just looking at the prices, but go down, what is this going to do? And I had a guy tell me about a driver a couple of years ago. I said, now tell me, what's the difference in this? What's this driver going to do for me? He said, if you hit it correctly, it's going to add about 10 yards to your drive. And I started thinking, that would get me closer, but I can't control the next shot. What is 10 yards closer to the green going to do for me? And I began to think, Brian, you're not going pro. Not anytime soon, but ever. So unless you got the golf clubs that Noah brought over, because I believe he was a golfer, and you brought those and you're playing with those, you say, hey, I'm going to upgrade. See, what I'm saying here is not to try to make you feel guilty for what you have or what you've just done. What I'm trying to do is help you to see that what if when we begin to put God first, we begin to let go of this, and then all of a sudden, if we're not doing that, then this begins to shrink, and I begin to put this in perspective, and I begin to put this in perspective, and I begin to go, you know what? Is this really what I need to do? Am I really being a good steward of what God has given me? All of a sudden, we begin to be content. Begin to be content. The stuff we have maybe begins to look a little bit nicer. Number 3, we put God first, we end up with more of what matters. Proverbs chapter 8, 18 and 19 says, I have riches and honor, as well as enduring wealth and justice. My gifts are better than gold, and even the purest gold. My wages, so what I've earned, right, is better than sterling silver. So what begins to happen here? We begin to find out what matters. I believe God shifts our focus. God shifts our focus, maybe to what we don't possess. Now, what is that? I believe many of the things that we should value most are things we have no possession of. I have no possession of my wife, Amy. I have no possession of my daughter, Trinity. I have no possession of my time. I have no possession of this platform and this title that you guys have given me. I have no possession in that. At any moment, anything that we have, that we feel like we possess, it could be taken. So are we spending more time enjoying the stuff than the people and the things? So our takeaway, I want to give you a challenge, and we're going to work it out real quick together. Here's your challenge, homework, whatever you want to call it. I want to encourage you to do something we had to do a few years ago, and we kind of do this regularly now, is I want you to spy on your money. I want you to spy on it. I want you to look at, okay, where is it going? And this is going to be a template by which you do that with. I want you to watch it over the next week, the next month. And I want you to compare it and follow it, tracking it using this template. And before I get into this, let me give you something. If you are someone like me, you need something, you're visual. Let me give you an app, okay? You don't hear us talk about apps a lot at church, but here it is. It's everydollar.com, and we're going back to Dave Ramsey. But let me tell you real quick commercial for this, is that what it does is you download it on your smartphone. Buddy, you're out on this. But you download it on your smartphone, and you enter everything. You enter your income, you enter your outgo, and you have it all, and it can be shared. So what I have, Amy has, so there's no hiding, there's no this or that. You compile, if you have separate accounts, that's whatever, you just compile it. What are we doing? And I know your monthly stuff fluctuates different if you have different jobs, but you're all holding each other accountable, and you're following it. And what it's going to show you is it's going to say, okay, am I giving? What is that? And it's going to do percentages, because God doesn't care about amounts, and neither do I, so it's all about percentages. And when you type that in, it's going to give you that percentage. and you're going to be able to follow it. But what you may kind of be dealing with is, okay, well, what if right now, let's face the facts. What if you look at this 10-10-80 and you go, that's not me at all? So I want you to do this. What if you do it and you're looking at it and you go, well, 90's mine. What I'm going to do is you can change it up. This is our objective. This is our goal, right? God's not going to strike me dead. This is just me being real with you. If you begin to do this, begin to say, okay, God, I'm gonna watch it. I'm gonna watch my needs being met. But then, what if? And some of you are in the audience. You're going, you're way off. You're way off from my life. So let me deal with you guys in the room. You don't raise your hand. Don't. You can get with Carol. Just give me your number. We'll sit down together. We'll talk. Okay? And you're looking at that and you're going, that's me, Brian. That's me. What I'm going to say to you is I want you to look down. I want you to look down. There has to be something in here. There has to be something in here you can take. And you can take, all I'm going to do is 4. And you can keep doing that for yourself because you're going to say, man, this preacher is out of his mind. He is crazy. He's changing it up. What I'm saying to is, he says, try it. He says, take a step of faith. Give up something. You really can't give up anything. You can't say, you know what, I'm gonna wash one less load of clothes and lower that. I'm not gonna eat out, whatever. I'm not gonna get that coffee. I'm gonna shop somewhere else, whatever. There's something here. There's something here that you can say, instead of doing this for me, something I enjoy, I'm gonna invest. I'm gonna say, God, this is yours. It's about trust. And I would guarantee you, if this is you, and that ain't even the necessity, because some of us right here, right? We're doing 100. And here's what we do. I'm going to do this real quick, and I'm going to close out with some scripture. You're looking at this, and you're going, well, I don't agree with the way the church is doing this, and the way I'm going to get them is I'm going to hold on to my stuff until they'll do what I want them to do. And I'm going to give conditionally. That's fine. I don't know what you do or don't do. I promise you, you're not affecting me. And you're not affecting this. Because this is not ours. And guess what? None of that's yours. And none of that's mine. I'm not trusting the church here. I'm trusting God. And it doesn't affect me to give it. But you know what it does? If I hold it out of spite, it all comes back to the heart. And I promise you, I've met with people like this. This is not fulfilling. Let me just give you a question to ask real quick. Here's a question to kind of filter through these decisions. And as you're working through this together with your family, if you live alone and you're a college student, high school student, and you've got a little bit of money coming in or set back, whatever the case may be, as you're making those decisions, here's a question based on last week's message. In light of this, in light of me needing to trust God with more, in light of me needing to save up, in light of me needing to be prepared for this, is this purchase or this expense wise? So if I'm in this 104, if I'm in the 90, if I'm in this, whatever the case may be, as I'm looking at my expenses, as I'm looking at, Hulu, as I'm looking at Netflix, as I'm looking at whatever, and I'm not trying to do this because I'm a member of Netflix and I like Blacklist, here I am. So all of this, did the preacher just say that? Yes, and it's on camera. Is this purchase, this expense, is it wise? Psalm 50, 9 through 15. But I do not need the bulls from your barns, or the goats from your pens. For all the animals of the forest are mine. And I own, and you've heard this right, I own the cattle on 1,000 hills. I know every bird on the mountains, and all the animals of the field are mine. If I were hungry, I would not tell you. For all the world is mine and everything in it. Do I eat the meat of bulls? Do I drink the blood of the goats? And he said, I don't need your stuff, right? Make thankfulness your sacrifice to God, and keep the vows you made to the Most High. In verse 15, then call on me. I love this. Call on me when you're in trouble, because even when you trust me, there's going to be trouble, there's going to be hardship, and you're going, where's it going to come from? And I will rescue you, and you will give yourselves glory. Is that what it says? You're going to give me glory. We're saying to God, when we do this, we're saying, I've got this. I don't need you. When we do this, we're saying, God, when stuff happens, because even for God's children, stuff is going to happen that we can't plan for, that we can't control. God says, I've got it. I've got it. I can tell you story after story of personal stories for me and my wife and my family. I can tell you personal stories from many of you that said, I don't know where, I don't know how, but when I did it, it didn't make sense, but God came through, and I didn't need for anything. I didn't get what I wanted that month. I didn't get what I thought I needed, but every need I had was in the right perspective. And I laid my head down at night completely filled with peace. And I love the idea that, when he's in trouble, any cattle farmers back in the day, or still, maybe you've still got a few in the field, what happens when the cattle farmer needs a little cash, right? What do? You go sell a cow. And so God's saying, hey, I got you. All I got to do is get rid of one of these, and here you go. Philippians 4, 10 and 13. I rejoice, this is Paul writing from prison, I rejoice in the Lord greatly that now at length you have revived your concern for me. You were indeed concerned for me, but you had no opportunity, so you couldn't do much. Not that I am speaking of being in need, for I have learned in whatever situation I am to be content. I know how to be brought low, and I know how to abound. In any and every circumstance, and I know what it's like to be low, I know what it's like to be high, but in any of those circumstances, I have learned the secret of facing plenty and hunger, abundance and need. So the ebbs and flows of life, he says, I can do all things through him who strengthens me. So what he was saying is, when I put everything in the right perspective, when I put everything in the right pocket, when I do everything right according to what God says, then all of a sudden what begins to happen? Life happens. And through the ups and the downs, I find that my joy is not in my circumstance. My joy is not in the amount of my earthly worth. My joy is not found in anyone or anything. My joy is found solely and completely in Jesus. And that's the point. So why does Jesus talk more about money than anything else? Because he knows. He knows. And he knew today what we would be facing. That we constantly want more. We constantly want me to be happy. So I'm going to encourage you to pray. Pray through this. Accept it. Don't just say, well, I'm good. Well, Are you maintaining it? Are you maintaining it? Will you bow your heads with me? God, I love you. And I'm so thankful for your love. I'm so grateful for your mercy, for how that you bless us beyond what we can see. When we trust you, and for today's purposes, when we trust you with our finances, it affects far more than our finances. It affects our heart. It affects our perspective. So thank you for allowing us to borrow all that we have, not just the possessions, but what truly matters, maybe the people that we have no possession of. Thank you. I pray for the families and the individuals today. I pray that you truly speak to the heart of it. This is an uncomfortable message, especially if we're not managing it right. And our intent isn't to make it uncomfortable. Our intent is to try to help us to be at peace and rest. Maybe our frustrations, maybe our arguments within families, maybe a lot of that turmoil it comes back to this. All the other stuff is just symptomatic. If you're here today and you don't know Jesus, yes, I truly believe that Jesus can reach you even as we talk about money today, because it truly does come down to a heart issue. If you're here today and you don't know Jesus as your personal Savior, you want to invite him into your life, just raise your hand. I'd love to pray that prayer with you. Anyone today.